Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today, I'm your host, Dion Williams, and today I'm joined by Alex Morono and my co-host, Amir, who Alex is fighting the weekend. He's fighting on the UFC Fight Night, Thompson versus Neal fight card. First question to Alex. It says on the UFC Europe's Instagram that you're fighting on the main card. There's been a little of change, so I think Ryan Spann's fight fell out, and so there's been a lot of chop and change. Are you fighting on the main card on the weekend, or are you headlining the prelims? Because I'm not sure which one is true at the moment.
I'm pretty sure I'm opening up the main card. If anything, they lost some other fights, so I'm thinking we would get bumped a little further up than anything else, but definitely gonna be on the main card. I'm pretty sure we're the openers.
Okay, great. Is there any kind of difference for you to fighting on a main card to fighting on a prelims? Does it pump you up a bit more, or does it affect your mentality where it's like, okay, I'm fighting on the main card, I got to go out and put performance on?
No, it's definitely cooler. I've been waiting to be on a main card. I've not been on one yet. I've been the featured prelim a couple times, and kind of Anthony Pettis' notoriety certainly helps. But it's cool. It's cool to be on a main card.
And just fighting someone like Anthony Pettis, is this the biggest name of your career so far? Is this just the fight where you want to make your name known?
Yeah, by far. Like a win over Pettis really opens up the opportunities to fight really anyone else. So there's a lot to gain in this fight.
Do you think this fight kind of pushes you into on the cusp of the rankings? Because Anthony's like 12th ranked, so a win like this would really put you on the cusp. But obviously, there's fighters like Hamzat there, who's on the edge, who has only had one fight in welterweight.
Yeah, it's funny. Hamzat, granted, did very well. He got a bit of a line cut, and I think I'm getting the same thing with Pettis. It's a big opportunity, and it would have been a foolish mistake to not take it. So it was an easy fight to take, and honestly, I was in such good shape. Only having to train for like 2.5 weeks was really easy on the body, and it's kind of a best case scenario.
Anthony Pettis is known for his performance bonuses. Are you looking forward to potentially a fight of the night, or are you looking for that performance of the night bonus if you get a stop over Pettis?
Yeah, fight of the nights are always just kind of cool. It generally means the fight's competitive. Like, I'm not looking to take any extra damage, so I'm always gunning for performance bonuses, really more than anything else.
How are you feeling ahead of Saturday? Because, it's been a quick turnaround. I believe it's the quickest turnaround of your career. Is your body feeling healthy? Are you feeling fine?
Yeah, 100%. I only did it a couple weeks after that last fight just to kind of really let some bruising on my knuckles heal. And it was Thanksgiving week, which was pretty cool here in the U.S. So, the nutrition was good and the rest time was awesome. And, I did 14 days straight, I guess 15 days, including yesterday, of straight training. I was planning on kind of recovering a bit this week. And, man, feel better than my last fight camp.
So you enter the fight as an underdog. Does this give you some extra kind of motivation going into the fight?
Yeah, I always kind of prefer being the dog just because there's more to win and less to lose. It kind of puts more pressure on the other guy to kind of, to perform it, as well as everyone's hoping. And it's cool. It's a little bit less pressure. And again, just way more to gain.
You talk about, in the last question, you talked about the damage you took. You didn't take too much damage, but you were involved in a kind of a brawl fight. So, you gave more strikes than you received in that fight. And obviously, Rhys McKee took a lot more damage because your power is showing in that fight. You really showed how powerful you are for that division. Do you think this fight, you're gonna be expected to be in a kind of brawl? Because that's what Anthony Pettis is known for. He's known for these fights, which are spectacular. Yeah.
This is going to be a fun one for sure. This was such a good fight card. And then I just never expected I'd get put on it. And then I never expected they'd ever offer Anthony Pettis either. It was two really cool things kind of happening at once. But yeah, this is going to be a crazy fight. There's some other really cool fights on the card as well. So I'm hoping we one of many.
Yeah, you talk about the card itself. The card is crazy. For an end of a year card, do you feel honoured to be that kind of card yourself? Does it kind of highlight what kind of a year it's been for you? Because obviously that start of the year wasn't the greatest. It was probably not one of the highlights of your career or even of the year as well. But, you put up a performance like you did against Rhys McKee, and now you're fighting Anthony Pettis. Obviously, the UFC is very keen on you. They like you and they're backing you when they're putting you against someone like Anthony Pettis.
Yeah, it's cool. This is my 12th fight in, and I'm finally starting to get some love from the media, just in terms of being a fun fighter. And that's all I really ever wanted. Plus my teammate Jeff Neal's headlining the card. This was really a really cool finish to the end of a pretty bad year. Minus, November was good, December's been good. So it'll be cool kind of rolling into 2021.
Was this the best possible way that your year could have ended following February? Because, you know, your teammates, I think Ryan Spann was supposed to fight, that fight fell off, but I believe you have another fighter you train with us fighting as well, and Jeff Neal's fighting. So was this a great great card for you and for your whole team?
Yeah, man, couldn't have been cool. I know Matt Schnell was also on the card,
That's
but
it.
their fight got rebooked to January because I know his opponent got cut. So it's just going to be Jeff and I, which is cool. You know, we still got a teammate, and it's not going to be as hectic. So, yeah, really looking forward to Saturday.
How's your preparation been for the fight? Because it's been a quick turnaround. I'm not sure. Was it 2 weeks ago, something like that? The fight got announced, so we haven't had as much time to prepare and prepare for Anthony Pettis particularly.
Yeah, it was just under 3 weeks, which honestly was perfect. You know, one of those 3 weeks is going to be here in Vegas, where I'll still be able to work out and hit some pads and spar with one of my guys who came with me. But no, it was good, and it was just, so I found out a fight, the fight on a Tuesday, and pretty much trained every day since here. So it was like 2 weeks in one day of pretty heavy training, and it's been really effective. And if I sound a little hoarse, I was at a tournament on Saturday coaching for 8 hours, so I lost my voice. I'm starting to get it back, but yeah, it's been fun. It's been a heavy combat sports week for sure.
How has the preparation been with the pandemic and all that? Have you guys been taking precautions? How different is it than a usual camp?
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely more, I'm not freely working with everyone. I'm very much so picking my training partners, and the quality of training has actually gone up so much because I've only worked with mostly UFC guys. I spend most of my time at Fortis when I work with just the welterweights and Ramez, Razak, and Jeff. And then when I am in Houston, I actually meet up with Trevin Giles, who's an 85er. And those are pretty much my only training partners. And then at my gym, there's a few good grapplers that I'll actively, work with, and even when I teach classes, and then hitting pads with my coach, man. So it's been awesome. It's been super high quality, very, very hard training, and very effective training.
You talk about the quick turnaround this fight. You look at the inconsistency of Pettis in fights where, he is a former champion. He has that kind of ability, but some do question whether, inconsistency. He does. What kind of Pettis are you expecting to enter this fight at welterweight? Do you expecting, the champion himself? Are you expecting maybe someone, not the best showing of him? What are you preparing for here?
Preparing for the worst, which is going to be the best Pettis, but then hoping for the best, which is, just for me to really perform. I think it'd be a big tactical error to expect someone to be bad. I was just saying this in an interview recently. I've done this since I was an amateur. Anytime I'd get an opponent, I would always imagine them to be way bigger and way better than they really were. So when I'd finally see him, this guy's not so big. And then in the fight, when I'm doing it, I'm like, man, this is going really well. Whereas if people ever underplay or undersell their opponents, and the fight is competitive and they're not winning, then it can be a downward spiral of kind of the psychology. So now I'm expecting, the best Pettis that there's ever been, and I know he's been working hard, and this is my fight to really take.
Is there any fear factor for you in terms of fighting a former champion, or is it all to gain, all to win for you? You're full in for the victory.
No, I'm not a very frightened fighter. If anything, I get more excited now than nervous. Been doing this a long time, and I feel again, my psychological game has always been a very strong one for me. Very much so, a death or victory style. And no, if anything, I'm more excited and more motivated with this opponent than anyone else.
Khaos Williams also fights in this card. He fought him at the start of the year. Looking back at that fight, you go into it, you felt unstoppable. You won a 3-fight winning streak. The day before, you felt like you were on top of the world. How did it feel after that fight to lose in that kind of way?
And, that was in Houston. That was my hometown. That sucked. Khaos was still a little bit unknown, but I did my research on the guy. And I knew his best chance to win was an early flurry. So, going into the octagon, on the fight, I remember telling myself to, be patient, find my range, and just kind of, be the better martial artist. But the emotion kind of got the better of me, and I, planted my feet and started to brawl early, and I got out of hand quick. So I learned my lesson. I'll make sure to, be more technical. But there were some big takeaways from that fight. if anything, Khaos was a really big underdog, a bigger dog than I am against Pettis. So if he can win that fight against me, I can certainly win this fight against Pettis. Like, MMA is awesome because, anyone can beat anyone. So it gave me confidence that I could beat anyone in the game. And then two, it made me really kind of sit back and focus on like why I'm doing this. And honestly, it's for the thrill of the fight, like more than the money or the notoriety or anything, to like have fun and to experience like the most extreme emotions possible is a really fun kind of a attribute and factor of doing this. So there were some good takeaways considering how disappointing of a loss that was.
You experienced firsthand the kind of power he has at welterweight, which is not really what you expect in UFC at welterweight. If you get to have a rematch with him, would you approach that fight any different?
Yeah, I know I'm a far more technically sound fighter. So I mean, yeah, it would just be I even had a good game plan on that fight. I just didn't execute it whatsoever. But yeah, that's a match I'd love to run back. And honestly, it's kind of validating to see him do so well. And I'm really curious to see how he's going to do against Pierre. That guy's a wild fighter himself. It's actually one of the fights I'm more so looking forward to on this card.
Was there any fear factor for you entering that fight of Khaos? Because his name, the power he has. Did you? I was just interested in the mindset of UFC fighter entering a guy of someone of knockout power like him. Is there any fear for you? Do you ever process the thought of potentially getting knocked out that night?
I mean, no, it's the same risk. Every welterweight can hit hard. There's no fear. If I was afraid, I probably wouldn't fight. But like being cautious is one thing, and being aware. But I think fear is the wrong word, at least in my experience.
And then what was it, like 9 months on from that fight? You fought Rhys McKee. Were you annoyed during the time trying to find a fight, or were you just training and working hard and then wait until you got the opportunity to fight again? But how was the pandemic for you? How did you deal with it?
No, I wasn't sure if I'd fight this year. I run a gym in Houston, and we almost went out of business. So keeping the gym afloat was certainly my primary goal. And then once that kind of settled down, and that we were able to not lose as much money and at least stay in business, that I was happy with the idea of taking a fight. And the Rhys fight actually came kind of out of it was more of a surprise. So I was happy to get an opportunity and to take the fight. And I think that was a good fight coming off of a loss as well. And no, it all worked out very, very well.
Yeah, you looked great in that fight. I did want to ask though, what was going through your mind when the whole mouthpiece debacle was taking place?
Yeah, man, I've been to like hundreds of shows and I've watched thousands of fights, and I've never seen anything like that before. So it was all new, all a new experience, and it was one of those things like, the ref was Jason Herzog, one of the most professional refs I've ever seen in my life. He was working, the staff was working. There was really nothing we could do, so I was just kind of like patiently waiting to get back to it. And, and it would have been better if I was like more tired so I could have used it as a time to rest. But I really had a good rhythm going. I actually didn't want to take the break. But, what are you going to do? If anything, it's kind of a fun story to talk about after the fact.
Did you feel like he benefited from that break more than, well, obviously he did, but were you annoyed at the time that he was getting that break just from his mouth guard going missing?
I mean, yeah, but same thing. It really wasn't his fault. It wasn't anyone's fault. So it was just one of those things we had to kind of roll the punches and just kind of get back to it when we could.
What was that first experience like for you, fighting with no fans and the whole procedures before the fight? I believe you have to I'm not sure how long you have to isolate for, but it's quite a lot different from what you're used to.
Yeah. So fighting with the crowd and the arenas is cool. And I'm not saying I prefer fighting without it, but I do prefer fight week during COVID. Like right now, I'm in the hotel room. We have to quarantine for 24 hours. We get our test results in the morning. And then so long as we pass, then we're going to stay on the premises only. But then we can kind of go to the outfitting room and sign posters and kind of do all that stuff. But it's nice. The rooms are bigger than normal rooms. We have suites. So we have a living room and a kitchen and 2 bedrooms. It's very convenient, and since it's all in Vegas, the PI is here, so I don't have to go out and find my own food. They bring my meals every single morning, and they're very nutrient, ready. So the weight cut's even easier than normal. I enjoy this process very much. I was telling my coach when I fought Rhys, I was like, man, I hope I get to fight once more during COVID. And we never expected it to be within like 4 weeks.
Yeah, you talk about how different it is. Has it been different for you in terms of before a fight, a month before a fight even, with the current figures of coronavirus going up, is it kind of paranoid for you? Like, I don't want to catch the virus because if I do, I'm potentially losing a paycheck, and also you're losing fight.
It's funny you say that. I was joking with my wife and my coach the last couple of weeks. I was like, I love being in fight camp, but I hate being so paranoid about COVID. Because like after my fight, I didn't not care, but I didn't really care. Like, I'm young. I really never get sick. I've had a couple of people who I knew caught it and had like super mild symptoms. And but then as soon as I signed the contract, I went back into like SOS mode. Anytime anyone would do anything, I'd like stare at them or second guess anything. I would ask every one of my training partners, or people at the gym, like, hey, are you feeling good? And they're like, yeah, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. I was like, all right, you're right. So yeah, it makes for a slightly more taxing mindset. But, we're here in Vegas, we've been negative for every test so far. I just don't see any scenario where that would change.
Surely you couldn't have predicted any of the events this year. Everything that's happened, pandemic, fighting Anthony Pettis, losing to Khaos Williams at the start of the year, but going 7 months later, you win in the most emphatic victory of probably your career. You surely couldn't have predicted any of this happening.
No. And then beyond, the fight in February went south, and then the lockdown happened. And then I had my brother had passed away. And then I was on a hunting trip with a friend. And while we were driving in a vehicle, a gun had fallen and fired and hit him. He lived. He's cool. He's a fighter too. He'll be fighting in the UFC hopefully in a couple of years. He's 7-2 as a pro. But this year was just every time we were like, all right, it can't get any worse. It would get worse. So we stopped saying it couldn't get any worse. And then finally come like October, things started to really pick up. And then now this is actually finishing out as one of the better quarters of a year I've ever had. So it's really cool.
Is this the best way it could have ended for you, knowing everything that's happened? Because, that sounds like the most crazy year possible, even with, everybody's personal circumstances are different. But, personally for you, you must feel like you've gone through too much.
Yeah. And I'm generally a pretty optimistic guy. So I always try to find the silver lining. I learn whatever lessons. And yeah, I'm very happy and grateful that the year has finished out so strong. But I still have like the number one goal this year is it's not to get a fight against Pettis, it's to get a win against Pettis. So that's my primary focus. Like, getting the fight is cool, but winning the fight, that's really the prize.
How do you see that fight going against Anthony Pettis?
He's a vet. He's skilled everywhere. I really didn't put any restrictions or limitations on this one at all. I'm expecting to kickbox, but he's got more subs than knockouts. I wouldn't be surprised in this fight, if he takes it to a clinch or even shoots in. I don't know. So I'm going with like a very free flow, free form game plan. And I expect this fight to be a bit of a dogfight.
Considering how spontaneous Anthony Pettis is there did you just kind of, as far as practice goes and as far as training goes, did you just prepare for everything, every scenario, or do you like kind of expect something specific?
Anytime I would get some, more skilled training partners, they would, act like him in terms of just like throwing certain kicks. I have one of my better training partners at home. He's actually like a wrestling heavy fighter, but we would spar and he would like throw cartwheel kicks and all sorts of stuff. So I just wanted to kind of like see everything just so I can like be aware and try to like catch certain cues and openings. But I mean, this is one of those fights. If you focus too much on what your opponent's going to do, you're not going to do what you're going to do. So I think the real idea here is to like play to my strengths and try to like implement my style as much as possible. And every fight, I just try to do as much damage as I can in 15 minutes.
Do you feel like the quick turnaround kind of helps with that? Because say you have 3 weeks now to prepare for it, the focus is on you, not on Anthony, because you can't really prepare for Anthony in 3 weeks and yourself at the same time.
I mean, yeah, there's no over, analyzation, which is nice. And honestly, it's nice. I have such a good like baseline of conditioning going to this fight camp. So I was already in shape. So, I forget, I think like 15 days or 13 like straight days of training. And man, I'm in such good shape. It's not very taxing on the body. Like I am truly 100%, going into this fight. And I can't remember the last time I said that. And, even with Rhys, I had a couple of little nagging injuries just from that long training camp. And this one's been awesome.
Do you believe you're 30 years old now? So you're not really old, you're kind of at the midpoint of your career. We're going into your prime now. Is that how it feels for you now? Because you're fighting Anthony Pettis. This is the biggest fight of your career. This is where you start to get the fights and the wins that you always wanted as a UFC fighter.
Not to mention the great performance against Rhys.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you. No, yeah, I certainly feel like more athletic and more physically imposing than ever. And I was kind of like a later bloomer. Even as a teenager, like I looked really young, held on to like a bunch of fat and stuff growing up. And I always had like a really young face too. And now that's starting to finally level out. But, generally people who are baby faced, when they're in their 30s and 40s, they're the ones who are having like the last laugh. And like even physically, I just feel like I'm getting like the more dense muscles now. I feel certainly better than ever. And I look forward to like the next 6 years.
What is a long-term goal for you in the UFC past this fight?
Getting to 20 fights was always a strong goal. I'm coming up on that. But I didn't really consider the rankings because I wasn't very close to them. And I'm big on setting goals with timelines. So my goals are always very relative to what can be achieved within like a 2-year span. And a win over Pettis ideally puts me at number 12, which blows my mind and is awesome. And like the biggest opportunity I feel with this fight and a win is it opens up the opportunity to literally fight anybody on the roster. And that certainly was not the case before this fight. So just like future opportunities, future legacy, just future challenges. And even as like a fight fan and martial artist, there's really cool fights. Really any fight with anyone in the top 15 would be just amazing, with the exception of my boy Jeff. And man, just the potential opportunity beyond a victory here means everything. And it's that much more motivation.
Is there any particular fighter you would love to face in the rankings?
No, so I'm big, and I know it's kind of cliche, but I'm very much so like focused on the fight at hand. But I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of fights, and I know Cerrone's going back down to 55, but like a fight with him would be cool. Nate Diaz would be cool. Michael Chiesa would be cool. Damian Maia. I mean, and the only reason I say those guys is because they're not booked. Everyone else is already booked, so I don't like asking for fights against guys who are already fighting. But really any of them. I mean, that's how entertaining this could potentially be.
And when can we see you next in action after this? Because you haven't had this kind of turnaround before. So are you looking to take a little bit of a break and then get back in action?
I am, yeah. I would like to see maybe like a quarter two. So I definitely have some like business. I got some really cool things happening with my team and my gym in Houston. And so I'm actually going to facilitate all of that when I get back home after this fight against Pettis. And I'll need a few months. And then, just not really time to heal, but time to stop training so hard and kind of enjoy the holidays with my family. But yeah, I mean, like, the Venom deal drops in April. So I'd love to fight in April or May. Is
the Fight Island a potentiality somewhere you would like to fight?
I mean, yeah, just the idea behind it's really cool. I've never been to the Middle East before. Man, if I get to choose between flying 2.5 hours to Vegas or flying across the world, I'd choose to fly to Vegas.
Do you feel disrespected in any way that Khamzat Chimaev had one fight a welterweight, the same opponent as you, won it, and he's now in the rankings at 15? Considering you've been in the UFC for so long, had so many wins in UFC, do you feel disrespected in any way by that?
No, not at all, man. If anything, props to that man for bouncing around weight classes and fighting as actively as he did. I think it's funny that the UFC makes their rankings like certainly on their own agenda. Like I kind of like it. It's kind of like a boss move. And no, so like if I was like Wonder Boy, honestly said it really well. He felt disrespected because he's been in like the top 10 for a long time, and for a guy to take main event over him was kind of crappy. But that I'm not in that position. And again, I'm just very happy to be in the UFC. I'm very proud to have signed my 4th contract with them. Like as a regional fighter before I got signed, everyone's goal is to get to the UFC, but once you get into the UFC, you don't realize getting to the UFC is not that hard. It's staying in the UFC that's hard to do. And I've managed to become a mainstay. And again, no, I'm happy to kind of, take whatever job they give me.
Is that the proudest achievement of your career, is being able to stay in the UFC roster? Because I believe they're cutting like 65 before the end of the year. So there's a lot of pressure on fighters right now. Like, even if they lose one fight, their future is on their hands.
Yeah, it's stressful. If you look at like Clay Guida's record or Jeremy Stevens' record or Cub Swanson's record, they got some phenomenal wins. But if I'm not mistaken, Clay Guida's record is like 16 wins and 15 losses. Like, that's one, awesome. That's 30 fights in the UFC. But two, that's stress, man. Like, when you like lose one or even two in a row, thankfully it's not anything I've experienced yet, and I don't plan on it. But I know it's tricky when you go into a fight thinking you're being on the chopping block, and yeah, even coming off one loss, when you fight again, you're like, well, shit, if I lose this fight, I'm 0 for 2, and then it's your last try. So I mean, I like the kind of like the stable mindset of putting wins together, and if you go through my record, I actually have like pretty consistent tracking with my fights and wins. And my coach was like, just historically, you're due for a win streak. So I'm looking forward to that win streak.
I mean, this would be the best way to start win streak. Obviously, you started it 3 weeks ago now. And now you're fighting Anthony Pettis. Like that, there's not many bigger names in that welterweight division than Anthony Pettis. No.
Again, best case scenario, I was, I'm not very active on social media. But, when they booked the fight, I was talking to my wife. We were laying in bed, and I have like 5,000 almost followers. And Anthony Pettis is like 1.4 million. It was just the difference is funny. And I made a joke. I was like, talk about, using somebody else's accomplishments to get into high spots. But that's how the name of this game goes. I have a ton of respect for the guy. Honestly, if he was matched up with somebody else, I would be watching the fight, rooting for him. I was a fan of the guy, and after I fight him, I'll continue to be a fan of the guy. But like once, they offered the fight, I was like, whoa, and it was kind of surreal. But once they announced the fight, I was like, all right, mindset changes. Like, this guy is my enemy. I'm going to do damage to this man. And then after the fight, I'll go back to thinking he's cool. But right now, every time I think about him, it's me punching him in the face.
You talk about the difference in followers. Do you feel like you see these stars right now, like Joaquin Buckley got that knockout KO, and these fighters that have these spectacular KOs, this is the way they make the name, this is the way they grab the followers. You feel like this is the time to make your statement as a fighter. This is what your career's built up to get that statement win against Anthony Pettis. Yeah,
hell yeah, absolutely. It's one cool thing. Dana White gives us a speech right before the fight. He's actually not going to be here for this fight card, which I thought was weird, but I mean, he's the boss man. I know he's on vacation. But he actually gives a really cool speech about, like, this being the most viewed sport. Like, if you guys want to go kind of like make a name for yourself and make some real money, like, go out there and put on the performance of a lifetime. And that's one thing I've been just kind of telling myself, like, it's not for money or fame or anything, but I was like, I want to put on like a master class of martial arts skills. And this is the opportunity to do it. And like, the pressure 100% lies on me. And I'm like excited and willing to achieve that.
Is the key to victory in this fight is your power, because that is one of your certain skills. The overhand, the movement, your feet movement is also something that you have really skilled with. This is the way to possibly defeat Anthony Pettis.
Yeah. So I know it's a riskier fight considering how good of a striker he is, but I'm going to test my own kickboxing mettle, and again just really keep an open mind, and just take the fight wherever it goes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex. Wish you all the best on the weekend and for Christmas as well. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, you guys got it, man. Have a good one.
Thank you. Good luck.